Hello, and welcome to another edition of From the Bars to the Bricks Prison Ministry Incorporated. I am your favorite felon, Kev, here with another episode. I want to put now, if you have a weak stomach, if you're kind of sensitive, this video contains some very descriptive parts about the Carr brothers and the Wichita Massacre, also known as the Wichita Horror. Some graphic descriptors. I would recommend, like I said, definitely this video comes with warnings. Like I said, today I'm going to be talking about the Carr brothers. For you that are not familiar, and even some maybe somewhat familiar, not even completely know what the details of the case, I'm going to go through that today. You know, I'm from Wichita, was born and raised in Wichita, moved away only a couple years ago with the exception of my trips out of town for prison stays, and my couple years I lived in Marion. But I remember the brutalities, and I remembered some, details. I remember the Carr brothers explicitly, because in 2004, when I went into Sedgwick County Jail, they were still there 4 years later, fighting. But Reginald was an idiot. That dude was a knucklehead. He was in Sedgwick County in the pods. There's 4 sections, and A, B, C, and D. And I was in D, and he was right next in C. And there's a wall that separates the pods, or the sections of the pod, I should say. You can still, it's shaped like that, with the officer station in the middle, so they can see, down the sides and down the hall. For those of you who've seen stock footage of El Dorado Correctional Facility inside and all that, that was based off of the Sedgwick County Jail. So, but anyway, you can see through the windows and stuff the neighboring pods. And that guy was just a knucklehead. He was always running his mouth with people, starting fights, getting in fights, causing problems with the officers. Nothing but a troublemaker. I don't know much about Jonathan. If I've ever met him or run across him, I don't know it. I can say that. But Reginald, I talked to a couple times. We were in court holding together. He's an idiot. But anyway, so in December of 2000, actually December 8th through 15th of 2000, Reginald and Jonathan Carr drove from Dodge City. I was at the beginning. They're from Dodge City. They're not from Wichita. People always say they're from Wichita. They are not from Wichita. They're from Dodge City. Their major crimes were in Sedgwick County, Wichita. They have an extensive criminal history from the Dodge City and western Kansas area that preceded this crime spree. But anyway, they started out, like I said, the Wichita Massacre, also known as the Wichita Horror. It's a week-long series of random, just brutal crimes committed by the brothers Reginald and Jonathan Carr in Wichita. Throughout this, 5 people ended up killed, and 2 people, a man and a woman, were severely wounded. And I will get into that with more details. The brothers were arrested and convicted of multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, robbery, and rape. They were both sentenced to death in October of 2002, which they'd been back, like I said, repeatedly. In 2004, they were still fighting. They had come back on one of the many appeals they had filed. And with it being a death penalty case, that gives more criticism on the case by the courts and stuff like that. And I can't be mad at them. Every one of us that were in prison probably wished we could reduce our sentence. I fought my whole time down and ended up giving back a bunch of my time, most of it. But, you know, these guys are better where they're at. Like I said, this is going to get graphic. Again, I'm going to put another warning out there before I go into details about these crimes. I just want, like I said, all to know this gets nasty and graphic. So like I said, they were from Dodge City, and they tried to use the old poor me analogy, as I call it, the excuse of how they were raised, events and stuff around their being raised. They basically were saying they were a product of their environment. They lost a 2-year-old sister when they were younger. There was a bunch of alleged abuse and neglect throughout the home, and even later some family members and stuff kind of substantiated the claims. But nonetheless, we got to rise above. I mean, there's plenty of people done it. You know, all colors, all religions and all that have come from nothing, gangs and abuse and bad homes, and made good, positive people out of themselves. So it's just a matter. I consider that a weak mind, but again, we have to learn how to process them, the abuse and stuff too. Jonathan had actually attempted suicide at 16 years old. Obviously, was unsuccessful. And like I said, both of them had a long prior criminal record prior to this. They traveled all the way to Wichita from Dodge City, which is, I'm thinking my nephew and them live in Ashland, Kansas, which isn't far from there. And it's, if I remember right, it's like a 4-hour drive from Wichita. It's a decent little drive. And so, I mean, Dodge City's right around that same area as Ashland. I mean, it's so... they traveled quite a ways. I don't know if they were thinking maybe they were out of their element, out of the small, and get to the bigger city, they might get away with it. Or what they're thinking. But anyway, upon arriving in Wichita, they stopped at a come-and-go gas station, and they ran upon a guy named Andrew Shriver. They picked him up. They drove him around and robbed him from ATM to ATM, making him withdraw his money at gunpoint and everything. And then they took him out in the country, and this is winter. And it was a cold winter, not as cold as it is out today, but it was a really, really cold winter. And especially for so early in the year. But then they took him out. They shot his tires out and shot him and left him for dead. They didn't. I never can. I've not been able to uncover where exactly they shot him. It don't really say in all the research I've found, but nonetheless, he lived through it. So then, like, just a couple days later, they come upon, now we don't know, the stories are unclear whether they followed this woman home or they just was cruising through a Wichita neighborhood and found her sitting in her driveway. But they walked up on this woman, we'll call as Ann. She was a 55-year-old woman. She was sitting in her car in her driveway. They walked up on her, tried some niceties to get her, they rolled down the window to talk to him. They pulled a gun on her. She panicked, tried to start her vehicle. It was already running. That didn't work. Almost stalled it out. And she was trying to put it into gear to get out of there, panicking, and they shot her 3 times. She did not die right away. They took her to the hospital. They did get a statement and just like a description, enough of a description for them to know that they were looking for the same people that was responsible for Andrew Shriver. And here's where it gets really, really nasty. On the 14th of December, 2000. The other survivor in this case, we'll call her Holly G. She was at her boyfriend's house. The Carr brothers broke in through the door. It was her. There was 3 guys and 2 women in the house. I'm sorry to the family members and those of the ones that were lost. I did not record every name that was lost, and I should have, because that's really, we should give them respect, and I do apologize for that. I had made notes on it, and I don't know what I did with them, but I had names, but I seem to all right, let me see, I just found it. So, on December 14th, it was actually, I said the 13th, it was actually the middle of the night, so it would have been as of the 14th. The brothers broke into the house on East Birchwood Drive in Wichita, inside the property. I'm not going to give the address out there, which they had chosen at random. The victims: Brad Heka, Heather Moeller, Aaron Sander, Jason Beffert, and his girlfriend, now we identify as Holly G. Anyway, they broke into this house, and they heard a commotion, but they weren't quite aware. They were trying to wake up. It's the middle of the night. The brothers rush in the doors. They gather everybody in the house into one room. They ordered them all to take all their clothes off, strip naked, and hand over any money they had. Throughout this time, they ended up locking them in a closet, and they would pull them out a couple at a time. They forced everybody, 3 men, 2 women, everybody, to have sex with each other. After the multiple sexual assaults upon the men and the women, the forced sex acts with each other, Reginald got them to pull out their ATM cards, and he took them one by one to ATMs around the city to draw out the max amount and try to get cash. They ended up with over a couple $1,000s in cash by doing so. But while Reginald was gone, Jonathan was pulling them out and raping them again himself, assaulting the women and stuff. And they robbed But anyway, after all this sexual abuse, the violence, and everything torture and everything these people went through, then these brothers lead them all out. Keep in mind, they're still naked, barefoot. It's really cold out. They load them into 2 vehicles. Each of the brother drives a vehicle, and they take them outside of town. When they took them outside of town, they lined them up side by side, subsequently executing each of these individuals. And so there was 3 men and 2 women he'd take out there. He shot each of them. He had shot Holly G, and he kicked her on her, and where she was laid face down, thought she was gone. Didn't double check. They left the scene with both vehicles and left them for dead. They thought everybody was gone. Holly, she was a fighter. She was a survivor. They didn't even know it. They'd shot her in the back of the head, but little did Holly know that morning, when she was putting her hair in a bun and putting the plastic clip on her hair, the scrunchie clip to keep her hair together, that act alone would save her life. That hair clip and that her hair had slowed and deflected the bullet enough that the bullet had penetrated the back of her skull, but didn't end up with a fatal injury. So this poor woman, after everything she's been through, now she comes alert and she checks on all her friends. All her friends are dead around her. It's 17 degrees outside. Middle of the night, like 2 or 3 in the morning. She's out in the middle of nowhere, don't have a clue where she's at, don't know where the nearest house is, don't know anything. But she needs to survive. So she walked barefoot and naked over a mile in the snow and this 17-degree weather. She went around a pond, through some brush, over fences, barbed wire fences, till she finally found a house. She knocked on the home. The people were concerned. They opened their door at 3 o'clock in the morning, and here's a bloodied, naked woman. Had to be extremely distraught and a wreck. I could only imagine what anybody would be at their mental state at that point. But they got her a blanket, wrapped her in a blanket, called police, and of course they rushed her to a hospital and everything. She was able to give a good description before they took her off to the hospital. She gave good details. So, yeah. Well, while this is going on, the Carr brothers decide to return to the house, rob the house, and these people had a dog. They threatened to kill the dog prior if he didn't shut up and this and that. Well, they went back after the people were gone, and they ended up beating the dog to death with a golf club. And so the next day, and this is where it gets kind of crazy. This is where I remember, this is where I'm most in touch with these crimes. Reginald, his girlfriend, lived in an apartment complex in North Wichita. At that time, it was called Woodgates. I'm not sure if it's still called, but it's on 21st Street between Hillside and Oliver, on the north side of the road. At that time, I was a contractor. I had a construction business, and I had one of the subcontracted to one of the painting contracts for the buildings there. But anyway, I'll tell you about that in a second. So Reginald went to his girlfriend's there at Woodgates, and this truck was wanted by the police. It was, I think it was Jason's truck, the boyfriend of Holly G. And there's APB out for this truck. Well, the neighbor saw the truck. They'd seen the bulletins. They called police. They ended up, hey, this is not cool. Well, before they managed to call the police, they saw them pulling property, TV and stuff like that out of this truck and hauling it up to the girlfriend's house. What they didn't see is, evidently, I guess they didn't have a phone, so they went somewhere to call it. So they got in their vehicle and went and notified police. So I'm assuming they probably either didn't have a phone or they were just so scared they didn't even want to be in the area. They wanted to get the heck out of there. There's a substation right down the street from there, Wichita PD substation. So, but in the meantime, while he's doing this, the brothers disposed of all of the victim's bloody clothes, the bedding, and everything. They tried throwing it over the privacy fence behind the dumpsters into a field back behind these apartments. When they did this, the stuff hit the fence, and you could see blood on the fence and in the snow dripping from where the truck across. There was so much blood in these clothes, they actually left a trail. Now, that's why, we had went through there, and I threw some stuff in the dumpster that morning. As we went through, me and my buddy, we stopped on the way, got some breakfast, and I threw my McDonald's bag in that trash can. Man, I noticed the red all over. I'm like, man, someone threw some paint all over or something. I figured it was one of the maintenance guys trying to paint something or something, messed something up, or spilled some paint, or a resident that spilled some paint across the parking lot and through the, on the fence. I had no idea it was blood. I went on to work that day, and I didn't even realize the cops ended up going to the apartment complex and everything, and this big old, it's a huge apartment complex. I'm on the other side of the property. I didn't even know this went on until I'm home later that night, and my wife came in freaking out because, I was there when this murderer was there. I had no idea. I was working. I was oblivious to everything else. But anyway, so Jonathan was with his girlfriend, and she wakes him up, tripping. There are descriptions and a description of the car that's parked in her driveway that he's driving is all over the news, wanted for these murders. She ended up turning him into police. The two men were convicted on 40 counts, including carjacking, capital murder, felony first-degree murder, and rape. All sorts of, the list of crimes goes on and on. But only Reginald was convicted of the carjacking with Andrew Shriver. So now either Jonathan was with him, and there wasn't enough evidence to support that, which we hope, or it was somebody else that was with him at that time during that crime, and they're still out there. We will hope it's the first one. Like I said, they were convicted. They've been back to court 04, 05, even as recent as 2018 or 19 was the last time they finally got shot down in the U.S. Supreme Court. They're on death row. They are in El Dorado Correctional Facility. I didn't have a lot of interactions with them in El Dorado. They were in Supermax, but I never had a one-on-one interaction with them in El Dorado. When we went in there for maintenance or whatever, I hadn't really talked to them. From what KDOC website shows, though, is they both are long-term SAG, and for some reason, they have Jonathan working in a job. Whether it's a porter job or whatever, it's a death row inmate. I don't, personally, as a former inmate even, they shouldn't be out working the unit. They're supposed to be on a lockdown. And I'm not trying to be cruel, but that's their punishment, and these guys are dangerous. I've got friends in that prison still. I don't want someone like this causing problem, just because they're dumbasses. Excuse my language. But anyway, and Reginald continues to be in trouble. His DR history is insane. But these guys, thankfully, are where they belong. And as a pastor and a Christian, I talk about change. I talk about acceptance, showing Christian love, not judging. I don't consider that I don't know, I really accept judgment. I mean, it's plain black and white what they did. I don't say that they can ask for forgiveness and they'll be forgiven. But man, and I have no idea what either one of them's, where they stand on religion. Whether they're religious, Christian, Muslim, whatever, I don't know. So, sorry about it, guys. I forgot to turn my speaker off before I started recording. Power off. They just shut off. But, sorry about that. But, this was such and like I said, I didn't even realize the gravity of the details of their case. I knew it was bad. I remember the woman with the walk in the middle of the night. I remembered the blood on the fence, but I'd never really looked into their case until I'd been asked to do a video on them. Like I said, I didn't know either brother. Like, we don't like, hey, Kev, hey, Reg, what's up? And we're not, no. But Reginald was in an adjoining pod. That's the most I can tell you in 04, 05, end of 04, beginning 05. And he was an idiot. He was always in trouble and always starting problems. He was racist. I make a lot of racial comments. Just not a person you really want to spend time with. Anyway, I hope this today has been a little bit informative. I've definitely learned a lot. I had planned on doing this video earlier in the day. I couldn't start my day out with something so grim and negative. I had to do some other stuff first and get some positive content out there. I think I'm going to start a series. The BTK on my little brother's channel, From Prison to the Streets, Eric Swanson. Two videos on BTK. One with him and me. Then I did another video on BTK yesterday. About my county jail time with Dennis. But anyway, I think I'm going to start like a monsters in Kansas prisons or something like that to highlight some of these. I also did one on Scott Roeder probably a year ago, maybe several months back. I don't remember when it was. I'd go back and look, but he was the one that killed Dr. George Tiller inside his church. So yeah, but anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. Comment. If you want to know more about these guys, I don't know, like I said, a whole lot about them except for what I told you. I've not had a lot of personal interactions with them. I spoke to Reginald a few times, like in court holding and stuff, but hopefully don't know who I am. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you guys. Like, subscribe, comment. I want to hear what you got to say. I want to know what you want to see so I can put content out there for my viewers. Thank you guys. Love y'all. I'm Kev, and I'm out.